Okay, it's two past the hour or two past the half hour. And so we're going to go ahead and get started because we know how important your time is to you. Today, we're going to talk about the economic impact of Indian country food and ag. So we have had two previous agricultural census webinars. The first one was about the history of the ag census and really how that whole process started, how Indian country wasn't really included for a very long time, and then what it looks like now. And then the second one was about acreage differences and how USDA counts acreage versus how BIA counts acreage. And both of those are available on our website, so you can go back and watch those. But today we're going to talk about the economic impact. So those dollar bills and where they come from and who they go to and what it looks like for Indian country specifically. We're going to talk about what that impact looks like both for all producers and for Indian country specifically. And then we're going to get some insight from Skya Ducheneaux. She is going to tell us a little bit about what she's seeing on the ground with producers and how Akiptan seeks to transform native agriculture and food economies by delivering creative capital, lending paradigm changes, and enhancing that producer prosperity across Indian country. So I'm going to throw it over to Jamie. And if you have questions, make sure you throw those in the chat. We'll be happy to answer them. We'll throw some different links in the chat, so make sure that you look out for those. If you have a question and you don't want to throw it in the chat and you'd rather just come off of mute and ask us, feel free to do that as well. We want this to be very interactive.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Tish. So today is all about Indian country, ag, and just like you said, the dollar bills. So from the data, we have been able to see that Indian country ag is vibrant and diverse, and that on what's counted, there have been 58,000 producers on over 63 million acres that have produced $6.1 billion of agriculture products. So those numbers are huge in, comparison to where we've been in the past, and we'll go through all that too. But I will just say that for our data, we're using all taxed income without government support, just because this gives a more truer picture and showing just the products that are sold. So that's kind of where our baseline's coming from. So if you're anything like me and before this, you had no idea what market value is, don't worry, I'll explain. So the market value of agriculture is the worth or value of all things that producers grow or raise. So all the cows, all the sows, and all the plows. This is everything that is ensconced in that, and it's the big picture of how much all these products are worth to the people buying them. This value can change based on a bunch of different factors. We all know supply and demand. So if there's a lot of a certain crop like tomatoes, but not a lot of people want them, the price is going to be a little bit lower. But if there aren't as many tomatoes and lots of people want them for their salads and sauces, prices are going to go up. There's also the quality and type of product that can impact it, because some products are considered more valuable because they're special or high quality. Just for example, like organic fruits and veggies often cost more because they're grown without certain chemicals. And then also market trends, because we all know that what is popular is going to change from day to day. One year, everyone could be crazy about kale, and then the next, everyone's all about avocados. So farmers have to pay attention to these trends to decide what they're going to grow. And then there's also a growing demand for native grown or indigenous produced goods, both globally and at home. And we can contribute this to kind of being more conscious about where our dollars are going and wanting to support indigenous producers because of their story that's behind that. So with all the changes that are occurring globally and at home, consumers are more likely to purchase products with a story. And who better to tell that story than the original storytellers? Um, so when we talk about um, the market value and just kind of why it matters, it's because the overall market value of agriculture serves as the barometer for the agriculture industry's needs, impacting farmers, consumers, and economies on local and global scales. So these are all kind of the different components that go into the why it matters. So the first one is economic stability, and agriculture is a major part of many economies worldwide. So knowing the market value helps the government and businesses sort of understand the economic health of the agriculture sector. If the market value is high, it indicates that the industry is thriving and that it can contribute to economic growth and stability. And after that, we have farmers' income. So, whatever money that farmers are bringing in, understanding the market value of their crops is going to help them make more informed decisions on what they're going to grow, and also when to sell those products. So, if they know that which crops are in high demand and which are going to command good prices, then they can focus on those and then also potentially increase their income. And obviously, we all want to make a good profit. So, um, for an example, in the picture that we have shown here, this is actually from the Mashantucket Pequot, their maple forests, where they process the sap to create maple syrup. So, this is a really great example of tribes capitalizing on their traditional foods and just what is available around them. Um, the maple is in high demand, so when they're using these market trends to follow how much that they need to produce, or if it's even feasible for them to be able to produce their products, but also just understanding the market demand and crop value, it can also help determine if you should diversify. Maybe trying to look for alternate avenues on how to market your maple syrup, or if you want to create something else like a byproduct of that. I know that I've had some maple candies before, and a farmer may be like, well, I don't have the capacity to do that. It's going, I'm selling good enough. So just being able to look at those trends can really help them either broaden their horizons or think a little bit more realistically. So, um, yeah, we all see how health fads can come and go, and this can create a high demand for traditional foods as well. And so this information helps places like FSA also develop sort of like specialty loan programs. So next is food security. And the market value influences what crops farmers choose to grow. If certain crops are consistently undervalued, farmers might switch to more profitable ones. Potentially, these can affect the availability of essential foods as well. So, understanding the market value can help ensure diverse and stable food supplies. And something that we've also seen come from this is having traditional foods included in FDIPR packages. And if the market value changes, then the FDIPR packages can also change. But yeah, you think about your staple veggies and how those can kind of fluctuate too. So for consumer prices, the market value is going to increase the prices that we as consumers pay for the food. So when the market value of a certain crop goes up and it's high, consumers are going to see higher prices at the grocery store. And I know we are all seeing really high prices right now at the grocery store, which is not super fun, but if the market value decreases, then that's going to lead to lower prices for consumers. But again, like I've mentioned before, since there's a higher demand for more traditional or indigenous grown foods, the prices are also hiking up for those. So, you know, suddenly everybody's found out how great wild rice is and how delicious and how you can use it for so much. So the prices are going to kind of rise a little bit more. And even since the last census, we've seen consumer prices rise. And as they continue to rise, so will farm incomes. So not necessarily great for us as consumers who are balling on a budget, but it is, the farms are seeing good incomes. So double-edged sword. And also something that impacts all of this is global trade. Many countries rely on agriculture as a significant source of export revenue. So understanding that market value is crucial for international trade negotiations and determining competitive advantage in the global markets. Um, Something that I didn't know before researching all this is that beef, salmon, and other fish that, a lot of our tribes are harvesting here are in super high demand abroad. So they're going to be able to charge more for that since it's a lot more of a complex process of shipping abroad, and the people abroad are willing to pay more. So, just through all that, the producers end up making more money as well. And then some producers just have found that they have better market access abroad completely, and they won't even bother selling stateside because there just isn't that demand for it. Last year there was we helped host the first Native American food fair in Washington, D.C., and we had a tribal citizen who came up and explained that she had a tea selling business, and here in the States, it just wasn't super sought after, but abroad, and I think it was in the Philippines, she said that they love it. And so, that's where her market is, and she was able to find that sort of niche in the specialty. So it doesn't even necessarily have to be to selling to your own tribe or selling locally, because now tribal producers are really on the global scale as well. So now that we've kind of established the definitions, why this is important, let's go into the actual weeds of the data of what the 2022 Ag Census said. So the market value of all the products sold compared to previous years, Indian country has been showing steady growth. As you can see by these charts, they're just kind of comparing Indian country numbers to all producers. And as you can see from the Indian country one, it's just the straight line increasing. Whereas all producers kind of took a hit in 2017 and decreased. And then they were able to try and come back. But again, Indian country has just been steadily going up. And so what this economic impact means since 2007 is we saw the growth starting at 1.3 billion, and now, or in 2022, it was all the way to 6.1 billion. So that's almost like uh, I what $5 billion difference. So and also we are using the year 2000 to start with because that's when the USDA took over administering the ag census. So the National Agriculture Statistics Survey is kind of where we decided to start from.
Because that data is more comparable because they're asking the same questions, right, Jamie?
Yes, exactly. It's just a lot more cohesive. And these tables show the market value agriculture products, again sold in Indian country and by all producers. Again, it's just the same trends of Indian country has been increasing, whereas across the United States we've seen some fluctuations. And again, even that decrease in 2017. So what are the factors that are impacting all this, and what's affecting this economic impact? So the first is gonna be, of course, inflation. I feel like that's such a buzzword right now for everyone. But according to the what is it? Consumer product and
Consumer price index.
yes, thank you, Tish. They actually have a inflation calculator, and we were able to find that prices are 29.15% higher in 2022 than they were in 2007. So that's almost 30% increase. And the graphic on the screen is actually just showing the inflation adjusted US farm production expenses. So is just kind of a visual to go along with what the farm production expenses are on top of seeing how inflation has impacted that. So in 2022, $1,000 is equivalent to the purchasing power of about $700 or $708.48 in 2007. So almost a $300 difference. And then the inflation rate in 2007 was 2.85%, and the inflation rate in 2022 was 8%. So it's higher compared to the average inflation rate of 3.31 per year. So yeah, again, we all know that inflation has hit hard. But again, we're including this because this is a huge part of prices of production. The data that's collected for the ag census, there's still been a lot that's happened since the information was collected. Again, these numbers are for 2022. I didn't quite want to get into the 2024 inflation prices, but again, even without inflation, prices on production have increased. But inflation has just kind of intensified that. So another huge part that goes into this is you got to feed your livestock. So inflation prices for livestock feed can be influenced by factors such as grain prices, transportation costs, weather conditions, because they can affect the crop yields. But overall, there's been some volatility in grain prices over the years due to, again, weather events, changes in demand, both domestically and internationally, and then also policy decisions that will affect agriculture markets. But generally, grain prices have experienced a lot of fluctuations. There can be periods of increases and decreases, but over the long term, there's been a trend of moderate inflation. And this is actually one of the biggest impacts to livestock producers. And from the National Agriculture Statistics Survey, they say that feed is at the $83.6 billion as the largest expense item, accounting for 18.5% of farm expenditures. Because I mean, we all know the saying, hungry as a horse or hungry as a cow. They eat a lot, and I mean, I can attest to that too. Even when we just raise goats, it's
Well, and there's not a 1-to-1. So chickens are almost 1 pound of feed to 1 pound of meat, and cattle are more like 3-to-1. And so you're having to put 3 pounds of food into that cow to make 1 pound of meat. And so while chicken producers may not be hit as hard with increases in livestock feed, your cattle producers, your bison producers, any kind of large animal like that, you're gonna get hit pretty hard due to those increases in livestock feed for sure.
right. And then alternatively to your livestock is your farm equipment. Again, plows, sows, and all that good jazz. So for farm equipment, inflation rates can be influenced by factors like technological advances, changes in manufacturing costs, fluctuations in demand. So historically, farm prices have shown the tendency to increase over time. And a lot of that just really is to do with the fact that a tractor nowadays is going to be a lot more high tech, a lot fancier, and that's going to cost more. The materials are going to cost more, and also it makes an increased productivity, and that is a big demand for farmers as well. But the inflation rate can kind of vary too, just based on agriculture economy, global market dynamics. But during periods of prosperity is usually when we'll see that farmers are going to increase their investments in farm equipment. So for example, this figure, it shows that from 2002 to 2012, farmers enjoyed a 166% increase in their net cash farm incomes. So, you kind of see that they're willing to go out and invest more in a nicer tractor, a bigger combine. And so through these, the Census of Agriculture data actually indicates that the total market value of the inventory of the US farm equipment grew by 79%. So that comes out to roughly $107 billion to $244 billion. So yeah, that's a pretty big increase. But while this is substantial, this increase is less than the 93% rise in inventory values that occurred from the 1974 to 1982. And that was another period of farm prosperity. But then, of course, the farm recession of 1982 followed. And so that's when we see the decrease in farm investments. And something that is just kind of a general thing is that tractor sales are a really good barometer of other farm equipment sales by the industry. So if you were just curious as to why we were using tractors to kind of use the comparisons. And from this figure that we have on the screen as well, since 2021, sales actually haven't been as high, even though we're seeing that there has been an increase in farm net income. But we can just kind of speculate that other factors are involved, like inflation, and that maybe farmers are just less likely to go out and buy new implements right now. They're just gonna kind of make do with what they have.
Yeah, things like interest rates, or maybe the cost of tractors has grown so much that it's not as easy in this time of prosperity to go out and buy a new one.
Yeah, and just like you were saying with interest rates, there's also farm insurance that comes along with it. And the inflation rates for that are influenced by like risk exposure, um, insurance industry trends that can just fluctuate, and then also regulatory developments. Um, but generally, they're gonna trend upward over time due to these and like insurance pricing models just really fluctuating. And even though this isn't a huge factor, it's still something that is going to impact farmers and their costs of doing business as a whole. And then, of course, another buzzword, climate change. Um, and something that we have been able to see is that Indian country tends to feel the effects of climate change first, and this map is a really great visual to show that. Tish actually put this together to overlay BIA regions with drought maps. So you can kind of see where the institutional barriers are that come from that. And that drought really affects all reaches of things. It affects your irrigation, your food prices. The extreme weather can damage your crops. It'll, kind of make or break a growing season. And then also you've got pests and diseases to worry about and desertification. Um, but then on top of all that, there's the institutional barriers that can affect a tribe's ability to adapt to these drought conditions. tribes can have limited access and control over their traditional lands, and natural resources are also going to be impacted. There's a lack of reliable infrastructure, um, not as much access to transportation, drinking water, healthcare, disaster response, sanitation. I mean, all these are just a lot of factors that go into things that are going to hinder Indian country's ability to plan for and then also to respond to any climate related threats. So producers in the end are going to end up having to spend more money and time just planning around climate change. So it really creates a lot of volatility all the way from market to production. Um, and you can even see on the map that there's kind of a red hot spot over the Dene Reservation. And we know that that is a huge, like, it's a hot spot for drought, but it's also a huge hot spot for our producers. And even from the Ag Census stats, that's where we see some of the most producers coming out of those southwestern regions. But so that was all the nerdy data and your crash course in market value ag econ. So now we'll actually get into the weeds about what's being seen on the ground from our fabulous guest star, Skya Ducheneaux. Skya, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Skya Ducheneaux. Born and raised in rural Cheyenne River, and I am the executive director of Akiptan. We are a native CDFI, community development financial institution, that lends specifically to native agriculture operations all around Indian country.
Awesome. So, what inspired you to pursue your career with CDFIs?
I got so I grew up on a ranch, and when I turned 18, I decided I never wanted to work that hard again a day in my life. And I took the first internship that was offered to me, and it happened to be with the Intertribal Agriculture Council. And then so I went to college, and I had stayed involved with IAC on and off over the years. IAC had the idea of Occupton from just seeing like real life frustrations with producers trying to work in traditional credit systems. And so they had seen that frustration, and I had graduated, so I was looking for, a big girl job, my first job, and so IAC kind of connected some dots for me, and I guess the rest is history. So it was not intentional at all. I actually took the job without knowing what a CDFI was, but I knew it was a really great company. So I got incredibly lucky and so happy to land on my feet, but but I'm glad I'm doing what I'm doing.
I love that. What do you enjoy most about the work that you get to do?
I feel like it is incredibly rewarding watching people's dreams become reality and knowing that we played a small role in that. Granted, their sweat equity is 90% the reason for their success, but being able to give them that access to funds to make that happen and whatever TA they might need is perfect.
No, that's really important. Like I sat in on your panel during the IAC annual, and I that's when I learned about what a CDFI was, and just getting to hear you talk about what it means for producers on the ground and like how you help them through every step of the process. It's incredible. So I'm so happy that you could join us. So yeah, since we did the nerdy parts of digging into all the statistics, what are you actually seeing on the ground, and what are the kind of stories, if you have any, that can kind of be put to the numbers?
Yeah, gosh, where to begin? So super excited the industry grew, significantly grew this year, but like you said, we have to think about inflation. And then just because the industry grew, are we more profitable? Like I'm more curious in looking at the profitability, because the industry might grow, but if we're making less money, there's something there, right? So also being able to focus on the profitability of operations is super, super important and something to think about, and something that my loan officers are always having at the front of their mind, is making sure that we are helping businesses become profitable and not just sizable, right? And as far as like market trends and stuff, so in the 2017 ag census, they haven't quite aggregated it out for me to have the new information on the top of my head. But at the 2017 census, there was like 80,000 native ag producers, and was it like 70% of those or something were involved in livestock production. So as a CDFI, and when we're lending, we're heavy in livestock production because that's where a lot of the industry is. However, some of the trends and things that we've been seeing, we've been financing, or being asked questions about, are moving further up the food chain from just production to production and processing, or just processing, to help with different food security efforts, and working up the food chain to capture more of the food dollar. So I say all that to say, I wish I had that food dollar. I don't know if everyone knows what I'm talking about. I'm gonna get the numbers a little bit wrong, but Jamie or Tish, if you could maybe find, do you guys know the food dollar I'm talking about? I'm assuming so.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna get the numbers a little wrong, and we can correct them when they find that, and they can share it on their screen. But so for every dollar that is in that $6.6 billion number, there's a dollar, and producers make like 10% of the profits that is earned off of there. In the old food dollar, if you process that food, it was like another 30% margin or something, I think. Food processing. Okay, so farm and agribusinesses, so that's the production side, like the ranchers, the farmers, stuff like that, they're getting 11.6 cents. If you're processing it, your profits are twice as much. Packaging, transportation, they're small. Retail, trade, food service, that like 33% gap, that's a whole different story. But if you grow, I'm going to use beef, for example. If you raise cows and you process them yourself, and then you sell steaks, hamburger packages, stuff like that, you can capture so much more of the food dollar, and you can have more of those profits yourself. And so a lot of people,
we're really seeing that like with the Cherokee Nation, right? Where they are growing their own beef, and then now they have their own beef processing plant, right?
Yeah, so a lot of tribal nations, tribal governments as the entity are going into the processing and further up the food chain to capture more of that food dollar themselves, because they are larger resource, they have more money at their hands. And I know not all tribes are super rich, but it's easier for tribes to get access to that capital to make that stuff happen. But we're also seeing a lot of producers and a lot of individuals wanting to do that. It's a little bit slower of a process. I would say tribes can make it happen a little bit faster, but there's a lot of individuals that are wanting to start food businesses, not just food production, but doing that food processing, the retail, like the agribusiness side of things, which I think is super, super exciting. There is the Native American, you can quit sharing now, Tish, if you want your screen back. But the Native American Agriculture Fund did a reimagining Native food economies study, market report. I don't know what their official word for it is. But they said that in that report, they did a whole bunch of number crunching and analysis, and that if Native agriculture had the same level of investment as Indian gaming did, the agriculture industry would far surpass the Indian gaming industry. So what that could do for Indian country economically is game changing, game over, actually. Like that would do so much for Indian country, and there's so much potential in agriculture. I've been saying for a long time that agriculture is an underutilized economic driver in Indian country. And so seeing trends start moving to utilize it as an economic driver and to utilize it sustainably to use all the buzzwords, regenerative ag, climate smart, to use it in a sustainable indigenous way that we're taking care of the land still at the same time is so cool. And I love that we are tapping some of those, I don't want to say like untapped resources, but we're using them to spur our economy and get further up the food chain, have more food security for ourselves. So we're seeing a lot. I've been calling it like a food renaissance kind of thing going on in Indian country. And I credit a lot of it to COVID. When COVID happened and the food chain system collapsed, a lot of rural America, a lot of Indian country didn't quite have access to food at our local grocery store. A lot of times there wasn't hamburger, or if there was, it was limited to one pound package per family per day. On my res, we're one of the larger land-based reservations. Depending on the time of the year, at one of the old ag censuses that I looked at, there's like, was it like 70,000 cows on our reservation, about half of which are native owned. I can hit 10 cows on my way to the grocery store, but I cannot buy hamburger in my own grocery store. Like it makes no sense. We're producing this amazing regenerative ag product, but we can't actually buy it in our grocery stores. And I think that that was a fact that a lot of us had known, but we were fine. We could still get hamburger at the store. But when COVID hit and a lot of those food chain systems collapsed, I think it really lit a fire under a bunch of people's butts to make sure that that doesn't happen to us again. And so that's where we're having this sort of like food security renaissance and like really putting a lot of time, effort, and money into whether it's, a small scale garden business or a large processing plant, getting like tribes getting their own buffalo herds or just whatever it is. And then even all the way to the federal stuff, where the Native Farm Bill Coalition is wanting to make the FDIPR pilot program, like this, when they 638'd the FDIPR authority, like that as a pilot, make it permanent, that is going to spur the local food economies more. And that's going to be resources and support for more localized food systems. And so there's like this whole trend into being able to feed ourselves and being able to move past just production, because we're really, really good producers in Indian country, but be able to capture more of the food dollar, and really begin to use agriculture as the economic driver that it can be for Indian country. That was quite a bit of a soapbox.
Oh, that was so perfect. I could not agree more. I love the way that you said the agriculture renaissance, because I feel like that's exactly what it is. I think you summed it up perfectly, beautifully. I know, I feel like all my other questions are going to pale in comparison to that now.
I have a few
but
soapboxes ready to go at all times, so go ahead.
perfect. Good. People want to hear from you, not from me. I'm just the nerd with the numbers. But so kind of getting back into what a CDFI does and how you are specifically helping with these things, how are you using the ag census data in your work and like identifying the needs for Indian country?
Yeah, so there is, I would say, here's a soapbox again. You're fine, Jamie. So Indian country is so invisible because we don't trust the government and we don't fill out surveys and we don't fill out censuses. And then I get it, and trust me, I get it. But that is how we make the most informed decisions. That is how funding allocations at the federal level happen. Even with the regular census, my friends would be like, well, I'm not filling that out. And I was like, you damn well better fill that out, because next time you complain about the roads, it's your fault because you're not, you know what I mean? And like, that's how we get funding. You have to fill that out. And I'm like yelling at all my friends to fill out the census. And it's the same thing with the ag census. Like, that is how decisions are made. And I know that like culturally, a lot of Indian country doesn't trust the government. But it's just some numbers that help with funding allocations, that help make major policy decisions at the federal level, but also like program initiatives with local nonprofits. So we use the ag census, knowing that it's not 100% accurate. It's some of the better numbers we have to go off of. We also conducted our own market study to help fill in some of the gaps that the ag census had. And so we did that market study in 2022. And then there's the NILS, Native Land Information System, or there's like, I have like a spreadsheet of all these resources that have all these data, and like having to piecemeal them together to be able to make these decisions. And so I use it for justification of a lot of our actions, and also like where should we go moving forward. So doing a lot of the comparisons between the 17 ag census and the 2022 ag census, and which industries grew in like numbers, because that indicates trends that we need to make sure that we are financing those areas, or you know what I mean? Like there's a cluster of native producers here and in this region, but we don't really have much of a footprint, and like what is the mismatch there? How do we get further in that region? So like we use numbers to make sure that we are reaching as many people as we can, and we're in the right areas, and we're in the right industries. And then so like stuff like that, because the ag census asks like pretty general information, and so that's kind of where that helps us out. And then like the average size and kind of some of those different things. And then with our market study and some of the other ones, we are able to see other things. So like one of the questions, so we did a market study. Sweetgrass Consulting firm is the ones who did a lot of the grunt work, and they were amazing. And we had this amazing producer survey. We offered so many incentives, and we got all this quantitative information and data that we had never had before. And so for example, one of the statistics that we asked is like, is someone at your operation, do they have off-farm income? And 75% of native ag operations have off-farm income. And you're like, oh, well, yeah, everybody in ranching has some sort of off-farm income. That tells me that the way things are being operated, and the way that markets are, and the way the traditional financial system is set up, is not allowing farms to be profitable. We can survive, but we never get to thrive. So like, what can we do to make things profitable? Because to me, having to have off-farm income when you're running a family business would be like, you know, me and you, Jamie, owning a restaurant together, and then I still have to go work in corporate America 40 hours a week, even though I'm already putting in 40 hours at our family business or something, right? And like that doesn't make sense. That's not sustainable. And so there's like all these numbers and all these statistics that you can infer all this information from, and then that we can curate our programs, our loan technical assistance, the way we finance, our interest rates, money we can go after. Indian country as a whole has significantly smaller balance sheets than our non-native counterparts because of our land things. We lease land from the tribe, or your bank won't value your trust land or whatever it is. So we know that because we've seen non-native farm reports and balance sheet averages and stuff like that. And we're like, okay, so we need to figure out how you're never going to change leasing land from tribes and stuff like that. So like, how can we build up balance sheets in other ways? So we pair our loans with equity grants. Like this is what numbers and data and things like that tell us. So the more numbers and data, and I know some of those surveys are just, might seem ridiculous and tedious, and you're like, these people are so nosy, but it's because we're trying to inform our programs, we're trying to inform our allocations and things like that to fill these gaps. So I'm always like, you fill out every survey, you fill out every census, like people are trying to make decisions based off of these things. So that stuff like that is what we use the ag census data for. And knowing the industry grew that much, but like I want to dig in deeper. Like how much did the profitability grow? Because if our profitability shrunk, I don't care how big it is. Like I want our people to have a good quality of life, you know? And so yeah, like we use numbers and data and stuff like that all the time to just inform projects, programs, loan styles, like just all the things.
Okay, awesome. Oh my gosh, that was perfect. I love to know that you guys are as deep into these numbers as we are. Um, so I think I'll just ask one more question and we'll leave it open for some time for some Q&A. Um, so we know that a lot of Indian country producers just kind of, on average, have a lot less liquid assets. So how does that impact your Akiptan's stakeholders' ability to do business? Or are there any other additional challenges that we haven't discussed yet?
Yeah. Uh, here's another thing that just boils my wojapi, as I've recently heard. It at Akiptan, because we're built by Native producers for Native producers, and we have dirty boots just like our producers, because all of my client-facing staff are involved in agriculture in some way, so we understand it. So we've built policies, practices, and procedures that take into consideration the realities of Indian country. So at Akiptan, things like that don't bug us one bit. It's not a factor, and we're able to not make you jump through a million hoops to make things happen. When you start working in the traditional financial world and you don't have a bunch of equity, a bunch of super liquid assets, they either won't lend to you because you don't have the super big, beautiful collateral ratios that they like to see. Or if they do, they lend to you at unfavorable terms, meaning like high interest rate and short repayment terms, because in a traditional banker's risk rating glasses, they're like, well, I'm doing you a favor, so you're going to do me a favor back and you're going to pay it back to me on my terms. And they're like, well, I see projections say you're going to make $30,000, so we're going to make your loan payments $29,999.99, and just I'm doing you a favor. And so you're going to be able to survive. You know, you can maybe make it, but you're never going to be able to thrive because of some of those balance sheet inequities that have a lot to do with systems that have been in place since colonization, right? And so there's little different things like that traditional financial institutions were just not built with the realities of Indian country in mind. A couple hundred years ago, when they were doing all these things, they were like, oh, and the Indians we love so much, like we can't forget about them. That's not how it went. One of my CDFI colleagues, she's a fellow executive director, she said it the best. Imagine you guys are all playing Monopoly. You've been playing for 10 rounds. So all the good properties are bought up. Every time someone, like you have houses and hotels and everything on your land, you're generating rent income. You're pass and go, you're getting your $200. And then I play, and I start 10 rounds after you. I have the same opportunities. I'm on the same board. I'm pass and go just like you guys. But I have to start paying rent, and I have all these other things right off the bat where you guys were able to grow into it, and it was made for people to all start at one time. Indian country is a little bit different, and so we're trying to catch up, and traditional financial institutions don't take that into consideration. They don't have a lot of those things in mind when they're doing business, because they're in the business of making money. So that's where CDFIs come in. CDFIs are so important to Indian country economic development. There's over 70 certified Native CDFIs, and I'm gonna lie, but like 30 emerging Native CDFIs that just aren't certified yet. And the opportunities and the potential is endless. CDFIs are designed to help figure out ways to get you around that board faster and to get caught up, right? So
yeah, Janie Sims Hip is starting a new CDFI that's her new thing after she got out
she's
of
starting an OFI, not a CDFI.
an OFI.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
yeah. So she NAFS will partner with CDFIs, and NAFS is going to be, so CDFIs, there's laws we have to follow, but we're not regulated like banks. This OFI is going to be within, like, it'll have like a foot in the farm credit world and then like a foot in the CDFI world. So they have access to farm credit money, and they're going to have certain regulations like farm credit, and they'll be able to do participation loans on certain loans with CDFIs where they can funnel farm credit money into Indian country in that way. So super excited for Janie and them to get up off the ground. I happened to be in DC when she announced her retirement, and so stopped at her office, and she's like, "Did you hear the news?" I was like, "What news?" And then she told me, and I was like, "Oh my God." I was like, "When is your last day?" I'm starting a countdown clock. Like, I was so excited to get that call when she came back over to the non-federal world.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, now I think we have time for some questions. If anybody has any, Skya, that was so beautifully put. So like more, it's just nice to be able to have a story and like the real life experience behind just numbers that we get from the ag census data. And
Feel
anyone
free-
can feel free to come off mute or drop it in the chat.
While we're waiting for people to come up with their questions, you can follow us on social media. There's our website. We're on Facebook. We have an Instagram. We have our YouTube. We also have a LinkedIn. And you can also sign up for our newsletter where we give you information about upcoming webinars, and also we do a policy brief where where Jamie has to watch all of the congressional hearings and then take notes on them. And then we also have a weekly Indigenous roundup where we tell you about different things that are going on. We have a policy corner, and we usually put some stuff from Akiptan in that little spot for our partners. Our next ag census will be on June 19th. And that's how you can sign up, although you are already signed up. And if you have more questions, you can, and you don't feel comfortable asking them on here, you can go to our, you can email us at agpolicy@uark.edu. Any questions? All right. Well, seeing none,
They don't, the clock is almost up. They're like, if I ask a question, Skya is gonna go on a soapbox and we're gonna
no.
okay.
When she was talking about global trade, Skya, is there anything that's like changing for you guys because of the increase in global trade?
Not specifically for us, but I will say there's lots of marketing opportunities to market your stuff as like Native American food. The Intertribal Agriculture Council even has like a native ag food trademark that you can put on your food so that people know it's authentic. And there's lots of opportunities in foreign trade and for people outside of the United States. And they have a really amazing American Indian foods arm that does nothing but help get you export ready. So they're really good partners there if that's something that you're considering.
That's great to know.
We really appreciate everyone coming today, and we can't wait to see you on the 19th for our next ag census deep dive.
I know that's the day after my birthday too. So happy birthday
Yeah.
to me. I get to do another ag census webinar.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for coming.